In 1991, Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, conditioned to be the colder time of year fighter, makes a fender bender and recuperates sacks of a serum that transforms individuals into super troopers. After the Justice Fighters crushed Ultron, Thor and Mass are mysteriously absent. Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, has returned home to invest energy with his loved ones. Indeed, even Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., has clearly separated. Commander America, Chris Evans, and Dark Widow, Scarlett Johansson, are driving another group of Justice Fighters. Comprising of Red Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, Vision, Paul Bettany, War Machine, Ware Cheadle, and Hawk, Anthony Mackie. Yet, the world hasn't failed to remember the various non-military personnel setbacks that came about because of the Justice Fighters' past missions. In Lagos, Nigeria, the group is following the developments of Brock Rumlow, Forthright Grillo, a Hydra specialist who had penetrated S.H.I.E.L.D. until Commander America uncovered him. Brock was on one of the 3 helicarriers that Cap had caused to fire on one another over the Triskelion close to Washington, D.C., and he figured out how to endure the subsequent accident. Gravely consumed in the occurrence, he wears a skull cover and goes by the name Crossbones. In Lagos, Crossbones and his group of hired fighters slam a waste vehicle into the foundation for Irresistible Sickness building and get out the watchman with smoke canisters. Crossbones utilizes water-powered gloves to invigorate him super, and pounds open the glass around the lab. He snatches a vial containing a dangerous, profoundly infectious infection. In a venue inside Tony Distinct's old school, a holographic video plays of him and his folks, Howard, John Slattery, and Maria. Toward the end, Tony lets the understudies know that he is beginning the Howard and Maria Unmistakable Establishment, and every single one of them has been supported for an Exploration Award. In a hallway, a lady stands up to him and shows him an image of her child, who had been killed in Sokovia, squashed by a structure that the Justice Fighters had wrecked. At the Vindicators base camp, the group is watching news film of the Lagos mission. The journalist says that 11 individuals were killed in the inn. Steve lets them know that he let his gatekeeper down, and individuals kick the bucket as a result of it. Vision tells Steve that Tony has shown up, and he brought the Secretary of State as a visitor, General Thaddeus Ross, William Hurt. Ross had been associated with the trial that transformed Bruce Flagg into the Mass, and afterward had gone through years attempting to chase him down. Ross lets them know that certain individuals admire them as legends, however others believe they're vigilantes. He shows photos of the annihilation that follows the group any place they go. Stressing the Sokovia occurrence, he puts a thick report down on the table and lets them know it's the Sokovia Accords, endorsed by 117 nations. The agreements express that the Justice Fighters will work under a board's management, possibly acting when the board chooses it's important. He says there will be a gathering in Vienna in 3 days. And in the event that they don't sign on, they'll need to resign. The group goes through hours discussing whether to consent to the agreements. And Tony shows them each of an image of the kid who was killed in Sokovia. Steve asks what will occur in the event that there's some place they need to go, however the board will not permit them. That's what Tony answers on the off chance that they don't consent to this now, it will be constrained on them later. Realizing that they've arrived at an impasse, Steve leaves in disdain. He receives a message that Peggy Carter has passed on and goes to her memorial service in London. At the Remembrance Administration, Safeguard Specialist 13, Emily Van Camp, uncovers during her tribute that she's Carter's niece, Sharon. She and Steve share a second after the help where it's implied that they are sincerely drawn to one another, yet they need to keep their kinship proficient. The following day, Natasha tracks down Steve and lets him know that she, Tony, James Rhodes and Vision had endorsed on, with Clint and Wanda waiting. In Vienna, a few heads of state have accumulated for the sanction of the agreements. Natasha meets the ruler of Wakanda, T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, and his dad, Lord T'Chaka, John Conney. Wakanda had become bountiful in vibranium, the material that was utilized to make Skipper America's Safeguard, after a shooting star crashed there. Furthermore, a portion of the Lagos casualties were from Wakanda. Lord T'Chaka takes the platform for the feature address, and Natasha sees security staff encompassing a van stopped outside. A blast tears through the structure, killing the Lord. Back in the US, Steve is sitting in a lodging with Sam and Sharon Carter when a news report comes in, showing the obliteration in Vienna. Security film shows the one who established the bomb, and Steve understands that it's Bucky. Sharon gets a text and lets Steve know that she needs to go to work, and takes a tactical plane to Vienna. Natasha glances around and sees many harmed individuals. Sovereign T'Challa gets a printed photograph showing Bucky leaving the van that had the bomb. Natasha calls Steve, and he tells her that he must be the one to acquire Bucky. He hangs up and checks out at the harmed constructing, having previously shown up in Vienna. Sharon sees him, and she gives him a document so he can get an early advantage on the manhunt in front of a German military team, GSG-9, who have requests to show no mercy. In Bucharest, Bucky gets a paper and sees that he is being blamed for the bombarding in Vienna. He understands that he'll need to rapidly leave. Steve goes to Bucky's loft and tracks down him there. The GSG-9 storm in, and Bucky blocks their projectiles with Cap's safeguard and the two fend them off. He hops down to the road, where he is gone up against by the Dark Puma, who scratches his defensive layer with metal hooks on his hands. Cap hops down and grounds close to them, and each of the three take fire from the GSG-9. Cap and Bucky get away. Yet the Dark Puma stops, allowing the shots to hit him and bob off. Innocuously, Bucky goes through the roads with Dark Puma pursuing him, and Cap and Bird of Prey following the Jaguar. Cap lays hold of a GSG-9 SUV, while the Puma jumps from the highest point of car to car, acquiring on Bucky. Bucky thumps a man off a bike, then, at that point, bounces on himself and firearms the motor, crashing into a passage. Dark Jaguar is still resolutely giving pursuit. Cap drives the SUV close to Bucky's cruiser, and the Puma bounces onto the SUV's rooftop, and afterward onto the rear of the bike. Bucky swings in reverse, thumping the Puma off, however he sticks his hooks into the side of the SUV and grips to its side. Bucky looks forward and sees Bird of Prey flying directly toward him. He stirs things up around town, and turns the cruiser around and drives back past the SUV. Cap tosses it into converse, attempting to stay aware of Bucky. The Jaguar hops up high, and grounds on Hawk's wings. Bucky takes a metal ball and hurls it to the top of the passage. It detonates, puncturing the substantial. Bird of Prey utilizes his wings to safeguard himself, losing the Jaguar, who went straight through the blast, safe. Bucky steers to keep away from a vehicle and tumbles off the bicycle. The Puma hops on him, swinging his paws at him. Cap handles the Jaguar, and they exchange blows, with the Puma's paws leaving cuts in Cap's safeguard. War Machine flies in through the opening, and the GSG-9 encompasses them all and advises them to put their hands up. They are undeniably captured, and Dark Puma eliminates his cover, uncovering himself as ruler T'Challa of Wakanda. On the ride to the team base camp in Berlin, Cap lets the ruler know that he has some unacceptable man. Cap, Hawk and the Sovereign get out, and in another truck, Bucky is taken out in an enclosure. They are met by Everett Ross, Martin Freeman, the head of the Central Command. The men have their weapons taken out, and they are driven inside the structure, where Dark Widow is hanging tight for them. Everett brings Sovereign T'Challa into one room, and the others are directed to another room, where Tony lets them know that Secretary Ross needs to have them generally arraigned. Tony expresses that as a split the difference, they will not get back the safeguard and wings, which are presently government property. T'Challa takes advantage of his leverage to have Bucky removed to Wakanda, where he will have to deal with penalties of illegal intimidation. Bucky is given an assessment to decide his psychological state. Still in the room with Tony, Cap watches it unfurl. Tony lets him know that assuming he signs the agreements now, Bucky will be moved to an American psych office rather than a Wakandan prison. Steve concurs, however, provided that protections are instituted. Tony lights up, lets Steve know that he and Wanda will be re-established. Steve gets some information about Wanda, and he lets Steve know that she is being bound to the Justice Fighters' upstate New York office, under the Watchman of Vision. Tony says it's everything he can manage, since she's not a US resident and they won't give her a visa. Steve says that she's just a youngster, and doesn't merit being detained. He leaves without marking onto the agreements. Hawkeye breaks into the office where Vision is holding Red Witch. He goes after Vision, however can't do any harm or quell him. Red Witch utilizes her powers to drive Vision through the floor and down a few levels, and she and Hawkeye escape. Colonel Zemo, Daniel Bruhl, having proactively killed a Hydra specialist and recuperated a book containing a rundown of words that will set off Bucky's inversion to his conditioned state, penetrates the compound as the therapist who will assess Bucky and peruses off the rundown. Bucky, perceiving the trigger rundown, is defenseless to stop Zemo and hammers right out of his cell, doing combating unmistakable. Cap, Natasha and T'Challa He attempts to get away from in a helicopter on the rooftop, yet is come by Rogers, who powers the chopper to fall into the stream. He protects his companion and takes him to a protected house where he and Sam Wilson brace Bucky's bionic arm in a modern press. Recapturing his detects, Bucky tells Steve that Zemo is going to Siberia, where there are a few additional super warriors, trusting that somebody will awaken them and give them a mission. Cap collects a group comprising of Bucky, Bird of Prey, Hawkeye, Red Witch and Subterranean Insect Man, Paul Rudd, to stop Zemo. By working beyond power, they generally become rebels. Iron Man frames his own group, comprised of War Machine, Dark Puma, Dark Widow, Vision and Bugman, Tom Holland, to capture the others. Two groups meet at the air terminal in Leipzig, Germany. Cap's arrangement includes taking the Quinjet a few individuals from the other group showed up in. Unmistakable attempts to speak to Rogers, however, comes up short and a pitched fight breaks out. Unmistakable demands that Peter Parker stay a ways off and utilize his webbing to curb anybody he can. Dark Jaguar plans to catch Bucky. Insect Man expands himself to 80 feet in level, diverting Distinct's group and delaying for Cap and Bucky to disappear to the shelter with the Quinjet. Dark Widow seems plan on halting them, yet she turns on Dark Puma, permitting Cap and Bucky to take off in the Quinjet. War Machine attempts to prevent them from getting away, however Bird of Prey flies after him. Tony orders Vision to stop Bird of Prey. Vision shoots an energy pillar from the Brainstone, which Hawk evades and hits War Machine's circular segment reactor, all things being equal, impairing his defensive layer's capabilities, making him tumble from the sky and affect the ground before one or the other Bird of Prey or Obvious can contact him. Distinct observes that Rhodes is scarcely alive. At the point when Hawk attempts to communicate his compassion, Tony takes him out with a repulsor impact. Subsequent to seeing proof that Bucky was outlined for the Vienna blast, Iron Man goes to the Pontoon, a distant icy jail office where different colleagues detained under the oversight of Secretary Ross. Tony can briefly obstruct the sound observation arrangement of the office sufficiently long to show Sam that Rogers was correct and that Zemo had killed the specialist who should assess Bucky. He can determine from Sam Wilson where Rogers and Bucky went. Tony sheets his confidential chopper and gets out in his Iron Man shield, venturing out to Siberia to get together with Cap and Bucky and bury the hatchet. When Tony sees as Bucky and Captain, they find that the super fighters have previously been killed, and Zemo, taken cover behind indestructible glass, uncovers that his genuine arrangement was to find film of the colder time of year trooper's most memorable mission. Dark Jaguar had been following, inconspicuous, and he hears Zemo concede liability regarding the blast. Zemo shows them a tape of Bucky causing the fender bender, and afterward killing the tenants, Howard and Maria Distinct. Without hesitating, Iron Man assaults both Cap and Bucky, and he requests to be aware, assuming Steve realized what had occurred. Steve lets him know that he just realized that Hydra was behind his folks' homicide. They battle, and Iron Man launches Bucky's metal arm. Cap in the long run debilitates Tony's circular segment reactor, delivering his suit pointless. Tony lets him know that he doesn't have the right to convey his safeguard that his dad provided for Steve. Steve drops it and leaves with Bucky. Jaguar finds Zemo sitting outside, checking out at a photo and holding a gun. He lets Dark Puma know that his family was killed in Sokovia, and he wouldn't stop until he annihilated the Vindicators from the inside. With his prosperity, Zemo attempts to end it all with the gun, yet Dark Jaguar puts his hand over the barrel, halting the projectile, and captures Zemo for judgment. Tony is assisting Rhodes with his recuperation, giving him mechanical leg supports to recuperate from loss of motion. He gets a bundle from Rogers the FedEx conveyance fellow, an appearance by Stan Lee, misspeaking his name as Tony Smell. No doubt stirring up a lot of entertainment for the recuperating roadie that contains a flip model PDA and a note saying Tony can call Steve if he and the world face any new dangers. At the Pontoon, Steve breaks the legends out and they go to Wakanda, where T'Challa gives them shelter. Bucky chooses to be returned to cryogenic rest until they can figure out how to fix his indoctrinating, with the goal that nobody will actually want to control him in the future. Peter Parker is recuperating from his wounds at home, telling May that he got into a battle at school with a person named Steve, and he evaluates another variant of the web shooter that Tony gave him. To his interest, it projects the Spidey signal onto the roof.